Okay, so I have two articles for you today. And the first one is Illinois launches first in the nation LGBTQ plus legal hotline, which is great to hear. It just sucks that it's even necessary, but still great to hear. I mean, we're living in a time where the Attorney General thinks that she's privy to private medical information to the point that she is willing to take trans people's personal data so she can find them and harass them, arrest them. I have no idea why she needs such sensitive information on people who are getting gender affirming care. And then we have Ron DeSantis, who is not only going after crosswalks that are painted in rainbow colors, but he even destroyed the memorial to the Pulse nightclub shooting, which was a rainbow crosswalk. And I don't know what's so offensive about it. You'll be able to see it in the dark. Oh no, how horrible. I failed to see what's wrong with rainbow crosswalks. So, under that backdrop, this is really needed. So, let's get to the article. Illinois has become the first state in the nation to offer a legal hotline for LGBTQ plus people. Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker announced the launch of Illinois Pride Connect on Thursday, saying in a video posted to social media that with all the things that are coming at all of us, for us to be able to go on offense and not be on defense is what I love about this state. The state of Illinois, today I'm announcing, is launching a first-of-its-kind legal hotline for LGBTQ individuals across the state. And Illinois is proud to announce it, Pritzker said. Building upon the state's transgender and gender diverse wellness and equity project that we launched at the beginning of 2024, we will be the only state in the entire United States that provides free legal advice to protect the LGBTQ community. Illinois Pride Connect will provide resources for healthcare, education, immigration, family services, elder services, and more, Pritzker said, both informing individuals of their rights and advocating for them. The organization will also host a hotline that can assist callers with legal issues, including but not limited to access to health care, such as gender-affirming care, discrimination or harassment, public benefits like Medicaid or SNAP, identity documents, and housing or safety concerns. The website states if you're an LGBTQIA plus individual or a concerned family member or friend, and you're facing legal issues that impact your health, safety, or access to care, we're here to help. The IL Pride Connect Legal Hotline offers free, confidential legal advice and referrals across Illinois. The hotline will be available at 855-805-9200 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. GMT. Why would they put it GMT when they're in the central? I get the feeling whoever wrote this is not here in the U.S. Through Thursday, offering services in both English and Spanish. It launches August 25th. Another thing that doesn't make sense about GMT is that's not 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. Central Time. Not even close. So someone boo-booed there. Like I said, whoever wrote this, not in the U.S. And August 25th is Monday. Together we are fighting ignorance with information, Pritzker continued. We're fighting cruelty with compassion. And I will put that number in the description of this video if anybody is in Illinois, needs the services, or if you know someone who's in Illinois and needs those services. I will leave the number in the description. So, piggybacking off that, I have another article which, and a lot of people like to make fun of Texas as if they're all a bunch of hicks who are bigots up the wazoo, which, no, I mean, there are plenty of bigots in Texas, but not all. So anyway, Texas constable tells legislators we're not interested in being the potty police at bathroom bill hearing. So even the police are saying, what the hell? Why do you want us policing the bathrooms? Okay. The Texas legislature's latest Republican bathroom bill hearing in Austin revealed as much about the politics of fear as it did about the actual proposal on the table. For 2 hours on Friday, the Texas House Committee on State Affairs heard testimony on House Bill 52, the companion to Senate Bill 8, which the state Senate passed earlier this week. The Texas Women's Privacy Act would require that people in government buildings, including schools, courthouses, and universities, use multi-user bathrooms, locker rooms, and shelters according to the sex on their original birth certificate. Local governments or agencies that do not comply could face civil penalties of $5,000 for a first violation and $25,000 for each subsequent one. Well, that escalated quickly. Now, okay. People don't normally walk around with their birth certificate, and they shouldn't have to. The reason people change their documents, like, say, their birth certificate, is because they want to be known as a certain gender. Granted, I have mentioned this before, that if people, it's not that people should know what your sex assigned at birth was, but I feel icky about your birth certificate being changed. I can understand any other document after that. But you were born the way you were born. I mean, point out that the person is trans, that they now go by such and such gender. But yeah, I just don't understand why the birth certificate needs to change, because that's revising history. Now, it changes when you're intersex, because if you're in a position where people just made the wrong choice, that they saw that you had genitalia of both male and female and just picked the wrong one because they had the surgery on the kid, that I could understand. Of course, then the birth certificate should really say that you were born intersex. So it's just a factual thing for me. Not that I'm wanting trans people to be going through more hoops, but you came out the way you came out. The fact that you realized that you needed to go through these surgeries, that you aren't your gender doesn't match with the sex you were born as, obviously you should be able to change that. And I realize that in order to get other government documents like an ID, especially for the first time, driver's license, passport, whatever, you probably need a birth certificate, which is why it should indicate that you're trans or intersex. without, and that should allow you to still be able to get the correct gender marker on those documents. Because, yeah, all those other documents are about gender. They're about how you present yourself. The birth certificate is literally that. Not what gender you were born as, but what your sex is. Because that's what they look at. You're just born. You don't even know that what's happening. You don't even know that when they put you down on a bed that you can actually move. There is no awareness there. Obviously, you don't know that your gender is different from your sex. You don't even know what your sex is at that point. I mean, it's months later until you discover fingers and toes. So, no. That's where I draw the line. Again, I'm not trying to make things difficult for people who are trans or intersex. It's just a factual thing. So yeah. I just don't understand why we are so obsessed with the sex on the original birth certificate. Because you don't identify as that. And if you don't identify as that, you probably are not the danger people think you are. Anyway, back to the article. Local governments or agencies that do not... Oh, I read that already. All right, but inside the hearing room, the measure's defenders often struggle to explain how such a law could possibly work. And the only way it could work is like what I did in my previous video. I believe she's in Minnesota, where a woman went into the woman's bathroom and she had to prove to an employee that she is a woman by unzipping her sweatshirt and cupping her clothed breasts. So so this person was satisfied that she's a woman, which that is just so ick. I mean, like I said, I'm glad that she didn't ask for her to drop her pants. We have at least that, but still. That is the only way the law could work, and that's just dehumanizing for so many people. Obviously, like that girl in Minnesota, it affects us people too, because people have decided that women should look a certain way, men should look a certain way. And so if a woman looks even remotely masculine or boyish or whatever, that's enough reason to humiliate them. Okay. Constable Stacy Suits, who has overseen Travis County Precinct 3 for nearly a decade, offered the committee his daily reality. His office sits directly across from the courthouse restrooms. In those 9 years, we have not had an incident like what has been described as what's been happening, Suits said. We're not interested in being the potty police. Suits then revealed a more personal stake. During the pandemic, my child, who identified as they, moved to Portland, Oregon. They are now transitioning and identify as a he. So I worry about their safety and the effects of this, he said. Well, luckily your son lives in Portland, Oregon, so he should be fine. However, he should not have to worry about, he should not have had to have mentioned he has a personal stake in this. Because, and that's the problem I have with some of these articles where they point out, oh, this person is gay, this person is trans, when it has absolutely nothing to do with, you're a compassionate person. You see that this is not a problem. You don't need to point out that your kid is trans, because that shouldn't matter. You should not have a reason to have empathy. And I might add that in this crazy ass world, the fact that this man is named Stacy, which has traditionally been a woman's name. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is the first Stacy I've heard of who is male. It's just, people will look at that and they will accuse him of being a trans man simply because his name is Stacy. Because that's how far we have fallen in this country. It's to the point where if you have an unusual name that normally is of the opposite gender, or if you don't look like people expect you to look like, they assume that you must be trans. But this is the thing. There are so many trans people that you've probably met or run into or walked past that you didn't even realize were trans, because most of them you cannot tell that they are trans. Why? Because they pass. They do not look like this monster you seem to have drudged up in your heads about what trans people look like. They do not necessarily look like men in dresses. Trans men don't necessarily look like women in drag. It's just, I don't know what people think that they're supposed to look for. Just let people be, for crying out loud. Veteran Democrat Representative Senfronia Thompson seized on Suits' testimony to underline the bill's shaky premise. And you have not encountered any incident, she asked? Not in the last 9 years, Suits replied. And Travis County's in Texas, United States of America? Thomas pressed to laughter in the room. Yes, ma'am, Suits said. Her final question cut to the core of the hearing. Have you been able to determine a trans person going into the restroom? I really don't want to go there because we don't want to be the potty police, Suits answered. We have enough trouble right now distinguishing in law enforcement between hemp and marijuana. I've been trying to pick up what are the characteristics of a trans person so that I can be able to identify one, Thompson responded. I have not picked that up. Exactly, because unless you knew the person prior to transitioning, how in the world do you know that that person is trans? They could just be androgynous. They could be a woman who has masculine features or a man who has feminine features. Okay, that could literally be anyone, because not all men look like the stereotypical macho man, and not all women look like girly girls. So how the hell do you figure that out? I mean, that is not possible. All you're doing is, if you accuse someone of being trans, all you're doing is humiliating yourself because you've decided, because you don't like their opinions, or because they don't look like you want to, or if they're a woman that doesn't look like you want to fuck them, they must be trans or something. Because again, what is the one constant amongst trans people that the sex, that the gender they identify as, don't have? Because unless you make them drop their pants, and I have to respond again that surgeries are a thing, I'm not sure what you think your accomplishing. And even if this is a woman with a penis or a man with a vagina, so freaking what? A woman with a penis is not out to get other women. Because, again, most people are straight. Same thing happens to trans people. Most of them are straight. So, just because a woman has a penis does not mean she's interested in any of the women in that bathroom. She's most likely interested in men. And I've mentioned this before. Then what do you do with lesbians? Lesbians can use women's spaces. Why? Because they're women. But, okay, so if you're under the impression that they will attack other women because they're attracted to them, then what's the problem with that? Oh, that's right, because testosterone implies that, and a penis implies sexual predator. Seriously, listen to yourselves. If you are a man who assumes that all men are sexual predators, what the fuck does that make you? Are you seriously admitting that if you could, you'd be a sexual predator? And for women who do that, how fucking scared you have to be of men that you assume any man or any woman with a penis must be a man who is going to attack me because the only purpose for having a penis is to put it in a woman. Which gay men exist. So, again, that argument doesn't hold up either. So, I do not know what is this fear, this trans panic people are experiencing right now. All right. If Suits and Thompson grounded the debate in real-world law enforcement, the bill's sponsor, Representative Angela Orr, was left strained to defend its abstractions. If you can't even properly defend the bill that you're pushing, that's probably a clue that it's not a good bill. Under the bill, if it becomes law, who would actually be in charge of confirming someone's gender or biological sex? Whose job is that? Asked Representative Chris Turner, a Democrat. Orr admitted there were no criminal penalties. Okay, so the point is, instead, she said complaints would be filed by the person who believes they have shared a bathroom with someone who isn't allowed to be there, in writing, with a government entity in charge of the building, a mayor, a city manager, who would then have 3 days to cure the violation. What the fuck does that mean? What, they mentioned that someone who matched this description used the bathroom at the same time I did? Unless you have a name or a camera in the bathroom or right outside, how would they even know how to cure the violation? Seriously, that is not helpful. This is just for the city administrators to it's just a way for people to whine to city administrators over the dumbest shit. Because, city administrators don't have more important things to do than being told, when I was uncomfortable because so-and-so was in the bathroom with me. Okay, I mentioned before that I felt uncomfortable in the locker room when I was in junior high and high school. How is that anybody's fault but mine? Okay, I felt uncomfortable. People do that. And yes, there are some women who are creepy as hell, just like there are men who are creepy as hell. Okay, so you felt uncomfortable with a certain person in the bathroom. That doesn't mean they're trans. It just means that they might have a creepy look. or maybe they are creepy. However, if they didn't do anything, what's the problem? Turner pressed. So then the chief executive receives the written complaint, and then what would happen? They would have 3 days to cure it by making sure that their signage is appropriate and that if they are notified that someone of the opposite sex is using the wrong facility, that they address that and let the person know that they have received their complaint or said. Okay, again, how do you do that? Hernandez raised the glaring omission of intersex people. How would someone know whether an individual is a male or female? Just by the way they look? Yes, in this case, Orr responded. Again, androgynous people exist. Androgynous-looking people exist. Again, women with male features exist. Men with feminine features exist. I've told you the story that I heard about the little boy who went into the men's room and got accused of being a woman, of being a girl, because he has long hair. I just told you that story about the girl from Minnesota who looks like a boy, but is very much a girl, who had to show an employee her breast, clothed, but still, just to prove that she's a girl and she belongs in the women's bathroom. So, no, you cannot go by just the way people look. So there are all these enforcements and penalties, and we're going to go by someone's opinion of how someone looks, Hernandez said. Public testimony reflected the culture war split. Anna Nguyen of PFLAG Austin accused lawmakers of scapegoating a vulnerable minority. Why else would they go after the trans demographic that is 0.4% of the population, Nguyen, who is trans, asked? Because this is a culture war issue and it helps them cling to power. And that's how authoritarians run. Supporters offered a very different picture. Dan Chandler appeared with a Confederate and U.S. flags affixed to his walker, warned of divine punishment. How can you have both a Confederate and U.S. flags? You do understand the Confederacy fought against the U.S., right? We got lines in the sky. He's a chemtrail conspiracy theorist. Lovely. We got blood moons. Okay, someone doesn't know how physics works. Great. We've got tsunamis. Right, because those never existed when everybody was right with God or whatever the fuck. We've got all kinds of signs, he said. If God will send a flood because you tore down the Confederate plaque, what do you think he's going to do about these kids? Right, because it's not like trans people existed through all of humanity. Nope, they only started to exist when you noticed signs. Blood moons have always existed. Tsunamis have existed. What the serious fuck is wrong with you? Chemtrails. What the hell? Those have existed since airplanes have existed. Just because you don't know how literally anything works does not mean shit. That's actually why religion was invented. For people like this who didn't know how anything works. Unfortunately for this guy, we do now know how things work. So why are you clinging to this religious crap when we know the answers to shit? Teresa Thomas of Moms for America said she had no prepared remarks but wanted to share her experiences. Yeah, this is going to go well. She described her time in graduate school at Texas Tech, where she said men repeatedly entered women's dorm showers. So wait a minute. You're comparing trans women to douchey college men who are, perverts. Totally not the same thing, but okay. I was in a shower when a man came into our girls' dorm and had sexual play with the RA. Okay, so was it forced or was it consensual? I had to stay in the shower for 40 minutes until they got done, she said. So it sounds like consensual. So, again, what does that have to do with trans people? This was repeated and repeated over the time I was there. So, did you complain? She added that when her children visited her dorm, she worried about when a heterosexual male was coming in and they were not safe. Okay. Again, you are comparing a consensual encounter, granted, that probably should not have been happening, but still a consensual encounter, and you're using that as an excuse to prevent trans women from going into the women's bathroom because they're there just for sex. That has nothing to do with their being male, and everything to do with them having hookups with their girlfriend in the bathroom. Totally not the same thing. Anyway. And again, if it's consensual, how are your children not safe being in the bathroom if a heterosexual male comes in? Because if they do come in, you've already mentioned that they're coming in with the express purpose of meeting up with an RA or some other person that they pre-planned to meet. So, again, how is this anything remotely like what you're freaking out about? Or that why are you freaking out that your kids might get hurt? Because, again, those men came in for consensual fun times. So, again, how does that put anyone in danger? Obviously, that's an uncomfortable position if you are in the shower, because you don't want to walk out of the shower when there's a male there. Fine. That is understandable, especially if they are having fun with someone in the bathroom and you have to just wait it out. Obviously, they should check to see if there's anyone in the freaking bathroom before they do that. But you could have complained. You could have gone up to the RA and said, stop it. So, again, everything's consensual. So, what are you worried about? Thomas then argued that traffickers could exploit bathrooms. Okay, that again has absolutely nothing to do with trans people. She suggested that handlers could present themselves as female to shield their victims, leaving women and children vulnerable. She asked lawmakers how many times such an incident has to occur before it is considered too many. And yet you haven't mentioned an incident yet. What incident are you mentioning right now? You're just coming up with a hypothetical, which, what, do you have Ghislaine Maxwell on your mind? Because that's a thing. And I'm pretty sure this dipshit is a Trump supporter. And he didn't seem to have a problem with Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein. So, I'm sorry, what? Could traffickers exploit bathrooms? Yes. Could they have female handlers? Yes. To think that they would pretend to be female to traffic women and girls is preposterous. Would they get a female to do their dirty work like Ghislaine Maxwell did? Absolutely. But last I checked, Ghislaine Maxwell is very much a woman. So she isn't presenting as one. She literally is one. So, again, you're basically trying to concoct a story to scare yourself when there's literally no evidence for it. But law enforcement voices kept returning to the same point. The bill is unworkable and it endangers people who already wear the badge. Sergeant Michael Wilmore Crumry, president of the Lesbian and Gay Peace Officers Association, testified against SB 8 on behalf of the group and himself. I've had the privilege of being a law enforcement officer and protecting the citizens of Texas for well over 38 years, he said. There are over 200 law enforcement officers in the state of Texas that are transgender, not to mention hundreds of EMS and fire department personnel and other emergency management personnel who are also transgender. He warned that similar laws elsewhere have already led to more than 45 instances where transgender police officers were confronted while using restrooms. Passage of SB 8 would only increase these instances of violence and make officers less safe even within their own agencies, Crumry said. Exactly. And it's been mentioned many, many times that the chance of someone being accosted in the bathroom is more likely to happen against trans people than cis people. Let me rephrase it. That the trans people are more likely to be a victim than the accoster. Trans people just want to use the bathroom. They are not there to accost anyone. And no man is going to go through all the trouble of taking hormones or having surgeries done just so he can accost women. Men have accosted women just fine up until now without having to do that. So why are you so convinced that men do that now? It's like you just learned about trans people and you immediately went to some scare story. As a body, this has consistently fought to protect and support law enforcement and public safety personnel. This bill directly negates your previous positions, he told the committee. I strongly encourage this body to vote no on SB 8. At the conclusion of his testimony, Thompson asked, "Did I hear you say that you had transgender officers?" Crumry responded, "We absolutely do." And I'm sure a lot of the people, including that Thomas dipshit, probably have met these officers and couldn't tell you in a lineup which one are trans. Why? Because again, most pass. So they're not the scary people that you have in your heads about, that you can tell by the way they look that they are shady, which, you can tell sometimes if someone's a creeper, but sometimes people just look like that. Look at freaking Kash Patel. His eyes are constantly like this. I'm pretty sure he's not a creeper. He just freaking looks like one. So how do you, whereas Pete Hegseth is actually a creeper, but doesn't look like one. He actually looks handsome until he opens his fucking mouth. But still, you cannot tell by the way people look what their personality is. And you sure as hell can't tell if they're trans. And their personality matters far more to me than what they fucking look like. And even if you are a man who accidentally goes into a woman's bathroom, that doesn't immediately make you a pervert or that you're a sex trafficker or that you're going to rape one of the women in those bathrooms. It just means you made a freaking mistake. People do that. People have been taught to be afraid of men and be afraid of trans people, specifically trans women, which I'm pretty sure if a trans man were to go into the women's bathroom. Let me try that again. I'm doing bad. If a trans man were to go into the men's bathroom, of course they would be scared, especially if they haven't had surgery yet, because they are a man with a vagina. And are there creeper men? Absolutely. Are there men who are perfectly fine with corrective rape? Absolutely. So your problem isn't with trans people. Your problem is with horrible men. Are there horrible trans people? Absolutely. But it's not because they're trans, and it's not because they're trying to trick you. They just happen to need to use the bathroom while being trans. It's just that simple. Nobody's trying to creep on anyone. It's the cis people that are mostly the creepers. So I fail to see what the problem is. Anyway, it's just too bad that we didn't get beyond that in this article about how that response played over in the crowd. You know, this idea of the bigots trying feverishly to try to figure out who amongst their officers are trans, because they're so convinced that you can tell who's trans. Because, again, they so want to make themselves feel good that they can protect themselves. Which, again, I don't care if they don't pass yet. They might be early in their transition, so they don't pass as well as they will later in their transition. Or they just simply don't want to pass. I don't know why they would want to do that, but whatever. Either way, just because they don't pass or don't want to pass, or they're not trans at all. Again, there are women who look more manly, and or they have a lower voice, and so they sound more manly. I mean, okay, how far are we going to take this? It's just nuts. Absolutely, we should protect ourselves from SA and R and whatever. We should totally protect ourselves from that. However, that does not mean that every person who looks male-ish must be a pervert and is going to attack women. You know, it just makes no sense. Because every argument a person makes against trans women using the bathrooms, they're going to accidentally include cis women. So I just don't see how it's even workable. All this is fear-mongering. You are afraid of something you do not understand. Again, are you afraid of lesbians? Probably not. So I failed, and nobody says anything about, gay men using the men's bathroom, which, yes, cis men are usually douches, and who can't handle when a gay man is in their vicinity. Obviously not all, just a few who do the gay panic thing. Oh my God, a gay man looked at me. Let's kill him. So yeah, but what do these people have in common? They're cis men. They're cis, straight men who do that. Trans men don't do anything like that, and sure as hell trans women don't. So, because if nothing else, they know that they need to be very cautious about what they do in the bathroom. They are usually scared to use the bathroom for fear that they will be either outed or just simply attacked for simply being trans. And that was before this trans scare. Anyway, that is the end of those 2 articles. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.